Well, welcome everyone. It's good to see such a wonderful crowd. We have several viewers online as well. So we are coming to you from Abbotsford, BC, and we have today our topic is going to be homeschooling through high school, and we have a mom's panel tonight. So the format is going to depend largely on you, our audience, because we need to know what are your questions. I am not going to answer them. I don't have wisdom in this department, but we do have. I am not going to answer them. I don't have wisdom. I also don't have wisdom in. I think I'm in the volume yet. Okay. So,
whoops. Good thing we have a techie.
Thank you. So it's going to be up to you. So if you're in the audience here, we would love to hear your questions. If you are online, and I see, yes, Terry, it's working. I hope you can hear us. If you can, just send me some messages. So I have the phone here. I can read the questions that are coming through from our online audience. So ask away, and I will ask our panel. So our panel is Adrienne Kerwin, and we all know and love Adrienne. She works here at SEB. She's spoken before, and she has so much wisdom. I'm going to get you to each introduce yourselves at a certain point. Okay. Then we have Wendy Livingston. She's homeschooled all of her children, and you're done.
Adults.
Yeah. And Norma Zenke. And I love talking to Norma. Like, I think this is one where I'm like, Norma has to be here. Norma has to be here. So let's start then. Norma, I'll get you to introduce yourself. We'll give you each about 10 minutes. Introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about your experience. And then we're going to get into the questions.
Hi, I'm Norma Zenke. I have 4 children. I began my homeschooling journey with a big question, and that was, who's going to be influencing my child in the class, and for what are they going to influence my child? So I went home to my husband after the French immersion kindergarten orientation saying, I don't know what the teacher's going to teach my kid, because everybody has biases, right? He had heard on the radio that homeschooling is like a fantastic option. And thus began our journey. We went to the convention and were blown away and completely overwhelmed. You know, we remained that way for about 3 years, I guess. So, so my oldest daughter's 28, and then my youngest son is 20. They're all adults. 3 of them are out of the house. The last one's in her 5th year university. My ideal for homeschooling is registered style. So in BC, that means that no one's looking over your shoulder. You get to do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it. And that was my favorite kind of homeschooling. I always had a long goal in mind. So for me, as long as they graduated at grade 12 with what they needed, I didn't care where they were in grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. So that became less stressful, less important. I think also for me, a very important base was math is sequential. So it's an essential. You have to do math all the time. And English is the form of communication that we use to learn anything and to be able to communicate. So that's absolutely essential. So those 2 things, we failed my kids. They're hilarious. Mom, is Alberta? Is that in Calgary? You know, we just didn't do well in some subjects. But it doesn't matter because they know how to read, they know how to communicate, so they can find all those things out for the rest of their life. And who of us at the end of grade 12 knew everything? Not me. Anyway, so I think that's it.
Thank you, Norma. Thank you very much. Wendy.
I'm Wendy Livingstone, and I have 7 children, 5 married, 1 engaged, and another child. I homeschooled them for 26 and a half years, and I have since done homeschool with grandma, just a class here or there, and it's been great fun. I'm going to do another book study with 3 of my grandchildren on The Hobbit. Let's see. I have 4 that graduated from homeschool. 2 have a dogwood. Somehow they managed. And what was the other one? I guess just homeschool. They're all successful, wonderfully rounded adults. And I count them among my very best friends. So they still come over for dinner, and The dinner is a little bit of an aside. It's okay, we always eat, but the conversation flows. Always has and always will. That's the bonus to homeschooling, I felt, for us. That's about all for now.
That's it. That's beautiful, Wendy. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. And Adrienne?
Yeah, and I am Adrienne, and I have 7 children, and 4 of them have graduated, and I just have 3 at home now, which kind of feels like I'm back where I started, because when we started homeschooling, there were only 3 of them. And we, throughout our homeschool years, we did a combination of DL and registered. And I would agree with Norma that registered is my absolute favorite. That's where we are now. We have been for several years. And will we always remain just registered and not enrolled? I don't know. I would say at this stage, sometimes it feels a little bit lonely when you have many children and they slowly leave and the house gets quieter and quieter. So sometimes I think, oh, maybe we should enroll and take advantage of the community classes and things like that. But we haven't done it yet, but I foresee maybe doing that in the future. We have 2 high school dropouts, I guess I would say, because we did attempt the grad program, the DL grad program with the first 2, and it was not for us. It was not for us. It completely went against what we even believed about learning. And just to tell you a quick story, I know some of you have already heard it, but my oldest, when she was enrolled for the Dogwood program, it was grade 10, and she was in a math class and getting very good grades, 84%, 87%, like doing very well. But the emails that would come in from the instructor were, she has to pick up the pace. She's going to have to accept a lower grade and move faster, because she was getting those grades, but at her own pace. And it was then that we just realized this completely flies in the face of how we've always done things. And so we had our first dropout there. And then the next one wanted to try the DL program, and same thing, we just ran into problems where the things that she loved to do, the things that she was good at, were completely overtaken by navigating the Dogwood system. And anyway, I mean, one of them was able to enter UFE without a Dogwood, and she has her diploma now, and so it is possible. And yeah, I think that's it for now.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to clarify for our live audience on YouTube, when we're talking about registered versus enrolled or DL'd, that's unique to us here in BC. And I think every province has their own version of that. Although I do believe that here in BC, we have actually one of the most free rules to homeschooling if we go the registered route. So we can actually decide, we can notify the government and say, we're going to homeschool our kids. We don't need your help. Thank you very much. In exchange, the government says, well, then you're not going to get any money and we won't give you a Dogwood. Some of us really like that option because we get to teach them the way we believe we get to teach them our values and our principles. So we like that. But there's also the option to enroll. And I think a lot of provinces have this. I know Alberta has the enroll, or the option where you go with the school board and the school assigns a teacher to oversee what you're doing. And in exchange, you get funding and you get diplomas and things like that. So we'll probably be referring to those throughout the night. And we would love your questions on those different options. If you have the option to register, we would love those questions. If you don't have the option to register and you have to work with a school board or a teacher, we would love those questions as well. And with that, I'd love to hear your questions.
Could the panel sort of explain as they meandered registered style through those high school years, what that looked like? Did you follow kids' passion with rich literature? Were you using a curriculum at your own pace? And I just would love to hear what that looked like a little more.
Okay.
Well,
you
just
wanna start?
before you actually take over, I tell you, I would do things differently. All right, go ahead. I had mine enrolled in the high school years.
Oh, okay.
So I was a traitor, I guess, or hypocritical or whatever. And we had a great time being enrolled in high school. One thing I am convinced of is, you probably agree, when kids are in high school, they really need peers. And so you get to pick their friends, right? And so even when we were enrolled in the DL through whatever, the government, they still had great friends, and we still could. I would do co-ops at my house, but we would work with the school teacher to make sure that all of the prescribed learning outcomes would be met and that sort of thing. So it took a little extra work on our part, but we did enroll. Go ahead, Adrienne.
Okay, so I'm starting with you. So your question was, what did it look like
you mentioned
as a
two of
registered?
yours when you were like, yeah, let's not go at that
Okay.
pace and check all those boxes in that order with that pressure for
Okay.
your first two. What did you do?
Well, we continued to do what we were doing, I guess is what I would say. We had by then a writing program that we followed. We followed a math program. We didn't have like, you must finish this level for grade 12. We didn't have that because, frankly, like, we had some children that were really strong in math. Like, one of mine did calculus, but one of mine language, English, grammar was more her bent. And so we downgraded there was really no expectation. You just keep moving forward. And then after that, after the math and the language arts, the writing particularly, it was very interest led after that. I believe very strongly in figuring out that kid and then designing said every kid should have an IEP. And I was
IEP. Yes.
like an individualized education plan.
Yes.
Right.
And I would say, I really believe in that. And homeschooling really affords you to be able to do that. And so, it was kind of different then for each one. The ones that loved history, their history then was really involved. The ones that really loved science but didn't like history, their science, it was really involved, but we downplayed the history. And so I would say after the math and the writing, then it was more where their giftings were and their interests, for sure.
Do you ladies want to come
There's
around? And we've
spots.
got seats here if you want to come on in. So I want to clarify that statement from Andrew Footwell, because I remember listening to one of his talks. It was a while ago, and he said that when a child has a special need, right, when they get flagged in the classroom, it's like, oh, that child has a special need. It's like the whole education system halts, and they focus on that child and go, what does that child need? And you get special EAs and everything else, and then that child gets exactly what that child needs. And so he was suggesting that in some way he wished that every child had a special need, because every child needs that level of attention and care. And that's where sometimes the registered option, you can do that, because you can hone into each child and go, like you were saying, this one is going to do calculus, and this one is just pre-algebras, we're good. We're good. So I think I think that's an important point as well when you're going through high school.
And actually, I'd like to add, just because this is being recorded, that that math teacher that was encouraging my daughter just work faster and take a lower grade. Part of that, it's not the teacher's fault. That is the system's fault, because these teachers get paid by the student, right? And so when your students enroll and get a teacher, there's an amount attached to them. And so if that teacher now has to take your child another 6 months in that course, like, you can see, it's not, like, a teacher would have a hard time with that, because they're spending now more time and would want more money but that's not the way it works. And so just, because it's being recorded.
Clarify.
What it was this system.
I would like to tell you about my oldest couple of kids. My oldest in grade 11 said, what do I need to graduate? And I said, take out a GED out of the library and see if you know all of that stuff. See what you're into. And she said, oh, went through that book. So simple. If that's all they want, I'm graduated. I thought, well, we've got another year. Let's see what we can do. So she took the 4-H program and mastered everything. She got all her credits and everything. And went on, and she has husbandry skills that she learned through 4-H. And so that was one of them. Another graduate of mine, in grade 12, I guess it was, he was at a worship conference, and a fellow from England said, you, and he went, and he said, I would like you to do an internship program in England with me. And I think he took a few kids from Canada back to England, and my son learned. I say my son is a CAD. No, he learned CAD. He learned a whole bunch of things because they ran different music conferences and stuff across England. What a wonderful education. And he came home, and he's an excellent graphic artist, graphic designer, computer assisted diagram. And he didn't get a certificate, but he also has some dyslexia, but it helps him go into the diagrams. And he's got some of his diagrams are on the walls of oil refineries, great big, beautiful diagrams, because he sees things that way. So it was a gift. And I want to just tell you that I started homeschooling when it wasn't legal or illegal. And I kept my kids in the house till 3 o'clock so that the neighbors wouldn't know that we were homeschooling.
There's more.
There's more. But,
You were afraid if the.
well, I heard a radio program by Carrie Simpson, and she said, if social services shows up at your door, have an escape plan prepared. This is kind of an aside because this happened a long time ago, but we were going to invite them into the foyer, say, yes, wait right here. I'd get the kids up and out the back door in the car and down across the border to the States before they'd know. Long before cell phones. So that won't work anymore, but you don't have to do that. And BC does have the best homeschooling laws, I think, in the world. Florida comes close, but
Yeah, and actually that story you just told, that's one of the reasons why I really respect you and Norma and to a certain degree Adrienne, but you two have been homeschooling like since the very, very beginning. And so in some sense, it's because you dared to do it when it was not exactly legal that we actually have the freedoms we do, and that it's actually now it's kind of cool to homeschool. So thanks for getting us there.
Cool.
I have a question that I would like to ask, and it pertains to how did your relationship with your child change in high school, where you kind of go from this teacher mentality and you're sort of pushing, like telling them what to do all the time, to transition into a coach, more of a coach? Because I would imagine the idea is to have them work kind of on their own or be able to do their own thing. And so you're now mom coach, not so much mom teacher. Like, did that happen? How does that look? What does that look like?
I would say for us that happened before high school.
Okay.
I think when you have a large family, that happens, it just must happen as early as possible, that they figure out how to do it on their own. So I would say for us, it definitely happened before high school, but it was incremental for sure. But like when I look at my youngest two, they can't do anything because I don't think
There was nobody coming after
there's
them.
nobody after them. And oh man, when I think of what you must have found out.
I
When
know.
Please
Yeah.
don't tell me it's just
No.
what my oldest ones were able to do compared to my, oh boy. Yeah, we got a little work to do.
Like in terms of just functioning around the house or academics, like what
Everything.
Oh, everything.
Yeah, functioning in the home. When I think of what my oldest 3 or 4 can do compared to those or what they did at the same ages, it's pretty shameful compared to what and I mean, I take full responsibility. But yeah, like, my youngest is still just clearing the table. And I think at almost 10, for sure, my oldest
Was making lunch.
Was, yeah.
In the oven or on the stove.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole other.
Well, what I found was when I was concentrating on the older two, getting them through school, I had 5 littles, and I thought, what do I do with these little kids? And I went to a homeschool convention, and Brenda told me to sit them down and do 5 in a row. I think I told this story before.
I like that
Yeah,
program.
so that's what I did with the 5 littles. Then another trick I used was I got a gal that came in the house, and she looked after the littles downstairs and made lunch. And I had the 2 high schoolers upstairs. And for a couple of days a week, I think we ended up doing that just to get them through high school. Then they had time on their hands and they had jobs. And you're right, they could probably run the household where the littles maybe couldn't. Something else that I noticed was the older kids always had a younger sibling to nurture, and they were very loving and nurturing. And I thought, what do I do with these 2 younger ones that don't have that bent? And then we had grandkids.
Okay, so that's what I mean.
Yeah, so they grandkids. I can lend you a few.
Hurry up.
I think I have some spare. But they learned to nurture through other children.
Yeah.
I'm much more capable because I only have 4 children. So I did it all. Thank you very much. So when did my kids transition from being told what to do to being nurtured to, or whatever, coached, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I consciously ever did that because I'm really bossy. So probably didn't. I also noticed that my first was super capable. Like I was out gardening because that was my space. Oh my goodness. Whatever I put didn't move. It was amazing, right? So she was in the house running the kids and making lunch. Mom, lunch is ready. It's like, oh. So she was the same kind of idea. I think I failed though with the other ones because if I didn't kind of sit on them, it kind of didn't get done. So I'm not sure I'm capable to have done better. Like,
Do you think it has to do also with the personality of the child? Like some children are more capable of just kind of launching, and other children,
they would rather do other things.
Yeah.
They get distracted maybe a little bit more easily.
So my son got married at just 20 years old. And he married his high school sweetheart. She was 19. And my other children were slightly concerned because they're so young and seemingly immature. And I said, there's nothing going to mature him faster than marriage. He could stay with me another 3 years and not get anywhere, right? So, and he's the youngest. I think that sometimes the youngest are kind of just dilly-dalliers. They don't really realize there's stuff to do. So I'm like, work yourself out.
All right, let's see. What other questions do you have? Yes,
I
Natalie.
have a question. I guess it's for Adrian. So I've heard all sorts of different stories around like registered high schoolers wanting to pursue post-secondary education. So I'm curious because your experience was fairly recently.
Yeah.
What your daughter, was it your daughter, what she did to get into
UFE? Well, now she did graphic design, so like that wouldn't be considered like an academic program, right? Like she was is an artist, And so she had a portfolio that she had to submit. And I believe she had to do a piece of writing to show that she was literate, I suppose. And so that's what she had to do. Now, if you had a child that wanted to do something more on the academic side, you might have to show Math 11 or, I don't know, a Science 12 or whatever, a prerequisite for some of those courses. So it would really depend on what they wanted to pursue. But one of the things that I actually wanted, I don't know if anybody's looked on the government website about graduating in BC, but if you go the enrolled route, you need 80 credits. Like you're right now, I know a lot of you have like 5-year-olds, so it'll probably change before then. But you need 80 credits. 16 of them need to be grade 12. 28 of them are electives. 4 of them have to be Indigenous studies. 52 have to come from career life, PE 10, science 10, and then 11 or 12, social studies 10, and then 11 or 12, math 10, and then 11 or 12, language arts 10, 11, 12, arts, applied design, technology 11, 10, and then 11 or 12, 3 grad assessments, and 3 grad assessments, grade 10 numeracy, grade 10 literacy, and grade 12 literacy. And so just by comparison, the adult dogwood, okay, is 5 courses. Is language arts 12, math 11 or 12, and then 3 additional grade 12 electives, or grade 11 social studies plus 2 grade 12 courses. So that's 5 courses for adult grad. They have to be 18. Only 2 of them can have been completed at school age, like when they were in school. The other 3 would have to be completed like once they turn, like once
school.
they're like out of school age. And so it's a fraction of what you would have to do for the regular dogwood. And I am not saying everybody needs to register, everybody needs to do the adult dogwood. I would just like to throw out there that this is an option, that if the institution they might want to go to, a university or whatever, wants the dogwood, wants a bona fide high school diploma, that is an option. And if I've got 3 left, if I have a child that really, Mom, I want to be a doctor, then I would seriously consider that. Unless they were just one of those really self-motivated, academically inclined, I would say, I would just throw that out there just so that you know that at least right now that is an option, and there's a lot less hoop jumping.
Yeah.
But it would totally depend on what they wanted to do, where they wanted to go.
Yeah. And just to tell you, 4 credits is approximately 100 hours of instruction and paperwork.
Yeah.
Homework as well. And 2 credits is about half of that, about 60 hours.
Yeah. Good point.
I wanted to say that self-motivation, or you were saying it depends on the child. And it's true. You'll have your kid who's really driven and wants to have all these things done. And then you'll have your child who just wants to game all day. And there's nothing that you can do to change that. He just is not going to pick up his math book unless you sit on him. And so that's the kid that's not going to go through the regular dogwood. I've got one of those. He has nothing. Yeah. So, I mean, he's great functioning in society. No big deal, right? Yeah. But, he wasn't going to get his typical dogwood, which is the transcript for graduation. Yeah.
Well, and I would say in your home culture, it's a good idea to normalize that not everybody's going and getting a 4-year degree. And maybe it's because they don't want to, maybe it's finances. I like whatever the reason. I really do think we need to normalize welding and construction. And as like they are important and you are still smart. One of the books I'm going to really talk Hester into bringing in. It's called 8 Great Smarts. And I read it over the summer. It's an easy read. And she based her book on some study that was done years and years and years ago on multiple intelligences.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember the name of the person that did the test. But the 8 Great Smarts, there was logic smart. Thank you. Logic. Was it word smart, self smart, people smart, body smart? Nature was one of them. Yeah. So there's all these smarts. And I don't know. I wish I'd had that book actually years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We've always, this is what you're good at. This is what you're good at. Everybody has giftings, but that book put it all in words and nice, tidy chapters for me. And it helped me understand, like she says, the word smart and logic smart. If those are in your top 4, because she doesn't like to talk in terms of you're this and you're nothing else, or you're this and nothing else. She wants us to think in terms of this is your top 4, this is your bottom 4. And if in your top 4 is logic smart and word smart, that fits very well with school. But what if those 2 things are in your bottom 4? School is going to be challenging, but maybe you're really body smart or self smart or people smart. And I have kids like that, and you must see that in your own children. Like you have ones that they fit really neatly into the academic smarts, and they don't fit as well, or some that don't fit as well into those smarts. But being a tradesperson is a good, valuable thing. Not everybody needs to have a degree.
In line with that, then, have any of you had kids that got kind of mid-teens and they went into an apprenticeship, or have you kind of educated them all to 18, the graduation?
All
kind of
to
mark?
18.
Okay.
So my kids are all in the top 4 would be the logic and the language, words, whatever. So my goal was always university for them all. Only one went. Actually, the oldest one went for a year and then she dropped out. But so part of that, I think, is an experience. Like you said, we didn't have that understanding when the kids were younger. But also part of it is my striving for excellence. And that's the goal. So we're going to go for that goal, right? I don't think they suffered for it because they all could learn from that. But they did not pursue academics and they went into trades. But it was at university level. None of them were earlier than that because I pushed the academics. They could do them. So let's do them.
Yeah.
They didn't like them though.
And there's also something, we're having a conversation recently about this, where kids are being kind of asked, like, what do you want to do with your life when it's high school? But there's a couple of problems with that. First of all, education has changed. So you can go to school or university when you're 30, 35. You don't need to make that decision right now. And who of us knew when we were like in grades 10 through 12, who of us knew what we wanted to do, right? And how many of us are where we thought we would be? Like our life is so nicely, I plan my life so well. I'm doing exactly what I wanted. Had I told anyone when I was in grade 12, I'm going to have a bookstore with homeschool, like they would have said, you're nuts, you're crazy. So we also have to inspire them to have an imagination, to imagine the impossible, because impossible can be done, right? So, but if we limit them and we say, you have to do this and get this so that you can move on to university and become, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? What do you, that's not fair. That's not fair to the child. Okay.
And we did do our oldest, Samuel, our oldest boy, started with trades when he was 16. And he went to high school for, so he started working in trades, and then he went to high school in his, I think it was his grade 12 year, just for the morning, just for the trades program. He went to Samuel Robertson Technical in Maple Ridge, and they had a lot of different trades things you could do. So he thought he wanted to do carpentry. So he did that's what he did in the mornings from like 8 to noon, and then he'd come home and then he would do the rest of his studies in the afternoon. Funny enough, he discovered he does not like carpentry. So,
Perfect.
so he went into the field after his level 1 and just said, this is not for me. And then he tried welding. And so he did on the job training for welding. And then just on Monday, this past Monday, started in school to actually do the book work.
I think that's
guess.
important for us as moms
Yeah.
is to be flexible.
Yeah.
You know, so we intend our child, even like my to be a math teacher until after graduation. He was enrolled in university to go and be a math teacher. And I think somewhere at the end of August, he decided, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd that come from? He goes, well, I just didn't think of anything else that was interesting. So I just said that. What? So then he did the UFV trade sampler, which is from September to December. And they sample all sorts of trades. But that was the year COVID was a winner. And so he was hardly in class. So I don't know how you can sample trades not being in class. We went from there. So he has changed. He was carpentry and then now he's electrician.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
You have to be flexible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I have a question from one of our live viewers. Adelaide would like to know, how do you motivate a teen who means well but is unmotivated to do certain subjects? Any pointers? I hate being a nagging mom all the time. We feel you, Adelaide.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you what not to do.
Not to do.
Don't take money out of their bank account and put it on in a jar and say, every time you don't do it, I'm taking money out of there. Don't do that.
I'm not very encouraging because I don't know really what to say because I had a kid like that and I couldn't get him off his computer. And to this day, at age of 26, he's on his computer all the time. He holds down a job, he pays a mortgage, all that stuff. But, you know, like it's got to come from within him. And I just have, sorry. And it kind of broke down our relationship a little bit too, right? Because as a nagging mom, it's going to break your relationship, right? So you kind of have to pick your battles a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's an element to this where you want the relationship with that child to be really strong? Because when that child wakes up and decides, whoa, I want to do something with my life, you want to be there for that?
I always want to be there for that. Like,
But if you nag them to the point where they just like, sorry,
my
Mom.
relationship was worth more than his dogwood.
Yeah.
And so he didn't graduate because I just left him alone. And it's hilarious because now he says, I would have done better in public school, Mom. And I just want to laugh because I'm like, no, you wouldn't.
Yeah. Wendy, do you have wisdom on that?
What was the question?
How do you
I'm
motivate a
listening.
teen who means well but just
Motivating.
unmotivated to do certain subjects?
Well, we were blessed to live on 5 acres and we had horses. And my husband and I thought better they're involved with horses than boys. So, so they had a lot of chores. And it was almost a break from all the chores and everything that could be done out there to come into the house and relax and do a subject. It was fun. We motivated them with chores, I guess. One of the things, well, I mean, they had their chores and I don't know. When they were getting antsy in the house and we're starting to dawdle, I give them a quick 15-minute break, go out and jump on the trampoline for a few minutes and come back in. And then I could take a deep breath, get another cup of coffee and go, go again. That's all I can think of.
I mean, I don't know the answer to that question either.
Mm-mm.
I don't know that there's one solution. What I would say is it might be worth evaluating what you're asking them to do.
I agree. Because if they're not going to be liking the subject, say math, they're not going to pick a career in math. So is it important that they finish that? Or can you just take a D or a fail and move on with your life. Because I remember when I got report cards, I just threw them in the garbage. I never even looked at them. I don't
Same.
care what the
Yeah,
teacher
what
thinks
do you-
about my child.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Gone they are, right? And so
Yeah.
why are they doing the math? What is it? And let them fail.
And I think that's
Yeah.
really key, actually, is to allow your kids to make dumb decisions. And then
It's hard
it
to
is-
watch
it's
them make
brutal.
dumb
It is
decisions.
hard to watch. I totally agree. But
Natural consequences.
yeah, so I would say maybe letting them fail, but also reevaluating your expectations. I think there's a lot of things we make our kids do that maybe they don't have to do to that level,
Mhm.
or they can pull back a bit. Maybe they don't even have to do it.
I have
Yeah.
another idea too. I'm a huge proponent to friendships. I love them myself. And so when I would want to teach my child a subject that either was hard for me to stay on track or hard for my kid to stay on track, I would just send out an email to all my friends and say, hey, I'm going to start a co-op. Let's do this. If you come to my house, now I'm responsible for teaching your kid. So that keeps me on track. And it keeps my child motivated because his buddy Evan's going to come over and Evan's smarter than him. And so he better pull up his socks so that he can, it's just real. And so we had great success with that.
So you don't
When I did
necessarily
that.
need to do a co-op. You could just say, hey, like if your teenager doesn't want to do literature exam, for example, say I'm doing a class on this book for,
Mm-hmm.
you could make it more simple because co-op can sound overwhelming.
I guess co-op wasn't, I'm bossy. Remember I told you that? So co-op's not that hard for me. What it was actually super social. So I get 5 to 8 kids in my house. I get to tell them all what to do. And I get to see my children play with their friends over a literature piece or something. I get to talk. So they were really, when they were young, co-ops freaked me out. I just thought they were the biggest waste of time. And they just sucked the life out of me. I don't know what changed, but when they were in their teen years, I loved co-ops. Go figure.
Kind of makes sense though, because I agree with you. One of you said earlier that teens need peers. And I think that's an incredibly important ingredient that sometimes as homeschoolers we forget and we turn into lone schoolers. And I don't think we want to do that. We want to have teen friendships. And other adults that our teens can talk to that we trust, right? That is important.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions?
Were there any novels that your kids read in the high school years that you would say every child or every teenager should read, that gave them encouragement, or just about the character, learning about bravery or sacrifice or
Fail. I'll just put it right out there.
There is a devotional out there for teens called Extreme Devotions, and it's about martyrs and missionaries. And we went through that book. Man, some of them were hard reads. But out of I had been a new Christian when we started homeschooling, so we learned the Bible together. And I got missionary kids that went out and were missionaries. And I thought, oh, how did I do that? It wasn't me.
I think you should be Hester's best friend.
Yes, absolutely.
Because she will give you books to read, living books, books that just inspire. I wish I knew her back when I was doing this.
Yeah.
But this became evident. My big fail became evident when my third child, she's doing her 5th year university. She's getting her teacher's degree. She has her English degree. And she was asked what novels in her teen years made an impact in her. What did she read in her whatever? And she came to me, she goes, Mom, we didn't read anything, did we? And I'm like, oh, we did. So that's where it became evidence. When I say fail, it's legit, because she had to analyze it. And she told me brutally, honestly, that there was nothing. So be her best friend. She'll give you books.
I can actually answer that question because I was homeschooled and I remember some very key books that I read that really impacted me. One of them is actually just reprinted and I'm trying to get my hands on it. It's called Ishmael, and it's about this young man who lives in poverty, and he kind of pulls himself up by his bootstraps and he becomes successful, but then he makes a bad choice and it pretty much destroys him. And the impact of that book, like you're rooting for this boy, and the mistake he makes, it's so natural. Like it's just like, oh my goodness. Like, and I remember finishing that book. I also remember that I had to do the laundry, but because I was so into this book, my mom just left me to read. And so I ended up getting out of laundry if I just kept reading this book. So that might be another reason that it impacted me. So that's one I want to bring it in because I think it's really impactful. But there's books like Anna Karenina. Again, it's a story about the consequences of sin and poor choices. And I think those are really important for teenagers. Jane Austen's kind of been ruined for us because we've got the movies, right? Pride and Prejudice. So you watch the Pride and Prejudice and it's like, oh, Mr. Darcy. But it's actually not what it's about. If you actually read the text, Pride and Prejudice, it's vitally important because there's every person in there that you will ever meet, right? There's the genuine, there's the gossip, there's the busybody, there's the sincere soul. So to have your kids read some of these books, they're starting to meet characters. And like they said at the conference this weekend, if you have them read these books, they will have met every person in literature. That
I
they will
didn't
meet.
know that.
You've been there. So I think that's why I think the classics are really important. And some of the great books, but I don't think that should ever be done. It should be done with teenagers, but only with adults and conversation around, because it's that conversation that's going to spark their imagination. And not preach. Don't do a literature study. Like I'm actually trying to think through how we could do this, but not a literature study, but like kind of a reading through the great books so they can understand the history, like they can understand the conversation, right? What is that conversation that's been happening through the ages? And don't teach it to them. Just let them hear it and talk about it.
That's where registered homeschooling is good because so much in the enrolled homeschooling world and public school and all that stuff is read the book, do your report.
Yeah.
And if you can just ditch that plan and have conversation, it's much more rich.
It's much more rich, and you'll get the kids that don't like writing. They'll actually get their thoughts out there.
Absolutely.
Right. We have a question again from our online audience. That's a good question. Did you ladies have a natural talent for the arts, and were your kids heavily involved in them?
No natural talent for me. But my oldest teaches piano and violin, and my second daughter is the artist and graphic design person, and very, very, very creative. So
they can learn to do things.
Yes.
That you have no clue about. And they can learn to do things actually without lessons in the early years as well. So Grace, who is my second born, she's 23. Yeah, she's 23. Sorry, Grace. She didn't have like a formal art lesson. I don't know, 11 or 12 years old. Like it's not something that we did and then just cultivated year after year. What I would say is we always had lots of books. So I wouldn't have a book for you, but we always had lots of books, and I was always willing to spend money on books, whatever they were interested in. But we also always had art supplies and paper and paints, and they always had access to a lot of that stuff. And I'm a cleanie, and it was very painful to be in a home of creators.
I was gonna say, so I don't like messes,
No.
and so I
And
didn't
I hate
permit.
glitter, and
I didn't permit a lot of mess,
Yeah.
which is too bad. But they weren't terribly artsy either. A couple of them were more sporty. But I was raised to. I studied music and stuff, right? And then I wound up teaching. I tried to teach my children, and it's so funny because people say, "I can't homeschool. I could never homeschool," and I'm like, "You're out of your tree. Give it a try, right?" But then I turn around and I say, "I couldn't teach my kids music. It just didn't work. We came to heads, and it probably had lots to do with me. But anyway, no, not artsy.
Our culinary arts part of the thing.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
I made pancakes. then my husband said, I'm going to perfect a better recipe. So John made pancakes forever. Our oldest daughter made the pancakes, then the next daughter, and the next daughter, and the next daughter. And one day, everyone was gone. It's just the two littles with me, and I made pancakes. And the little guy comes downstairs and he says, Mom, you know how to make pancakes? So that was kind of fun. But I grew up in a household where my mom would say, did you just use the sugar? Put it away. Did you just use the butter? Put it away.
Was she related
And it was
to
like,
my mom?
Oh.
Sorry, Mom.
And so baking did not,
You're apologizing.
baking was not fun for me because there were too many rules. It wasn't just fun and make something. It was, and put it away, and put it away, and wash it, and oh.
Sometimes it's only our capacity. Like we just mentally can't have all of this and this. It just doesn't work. And then as a grandparent, we have way more grace for it. And so, but because my grandchildren go away and I can just have my peace, right? So, get grandparents involved if they're artistic.
But what I was going to say is,
Sorry.
I said to the kids, you'd like to make cookies? Go for it. I'd leave them in the kitchen and shut the door and think, I can clean up a mess, no problem, but I can't hover over them and say, did you put that away? Did you? And I thought, oh, I don't want to be like my mom. Sorry, Mom. I don't want to be like my mom. I want them to do anything they want. And I've got a cake maker in the batch, and she actually does a beautiful job. So that is her art. That would be her. She's an artist.
Sorry,
Your
that's
mom,
not
just so
really
you know,
awesome.
your mom is watching.
Is she?
Oh, nice. She says hello. Hi, Adrienne's mom.
So, just so my mom really could write a book, and I've told her this many times on how to be. I actually get a little emotional on how to be a Christian grandma to a bunch of homeschoolers. Like she is amazing, and she could come here and you would have to invite all your moms and like the grandparents, and she could set them all straight if any of them are like off. But I did grow up in that house when we got up in the morning to bake Christmas baking. The flour was measured in that bowl, and the sugar was measured in that bowl, and the eggs were sitting there in that bowl, and you just got to, because she couldn't do chaos.
Yeah, I let my kids do all the chaos.
I'm convinced
and
that
mess.
it's
I thought
our
that was
own
fun for them.
capacity to handle that sort of thing, and we just get to our limit.
Yeah.
And rather than bite my children's head off, it just we're not going to cook.
Which is why I'm going to do a plug for the bookstore. We do live art classes here.
Yeah,
So if you want your kids to do art or painting,
Yes.
you can bring them here. We'll take care of the mess.
That's another thing about co-oping. Okay, so I always say to myself and to anybody who listens to me, surround yourself with smarter people than you. Find those engineers who you can call up in the afternoon and they're at work and go, okay, I've got a fraction here and I can't remember how to do it. I did that. And I took did I have a cell phone? Anyway, I told him on the numerator it's this and on the denominator it's that. And here's the answer. I said, how did we get from this to that? And he's just like, oh, on the top side to do this. Get smart people around you. Get friends around you that are willing to take your kids and do something with them, and you take their kids and do something with them. It doesn't all have to it takes a village. It doesn't all have to be you. And like you said, people you can trust your kids to, right?
I think that's important for the kids as well, because we don't want them to be raised in a world where they think all the adults are suspicious. But they need to know there are good adults out there. And in fact, there's a number of adults in my children's lives, and I'll say to them, you can talk to that friend of mine about anything that you would talk to me about. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to me, talk to the friend. And I think that's vitally important, especially right now with some of the stuff that happens with kids.
I have teens in my life. They're no longer teens, but where I've actually called them out on stuff that they're doing that their mom is blinded to. And I'm like, you know what? Because of such, so, and the other thing, this is what it's created. And that's a sin. You need to, and so we have that relationships as moms. It's not my job to go tell the mom. I'm talking to the kid. I see behavior. I'm talking to the kid. You need to talk to your mom, right? Like we're out there for their Christian walk, for their relationship with God and their relationship with one another as well. So I just find it's my joy and obligation to help mentor these kids, right?
But and that's also why I wanted you to come and speak. So you are doing for us this evening exactly what you just encouraged us to do.
Which is what
Find
she-
someone who
Oh.
is smarter than you to talk to us about what we.
Are you saying I'm smart?
Let's just do another question.
So when you're in the thick of everything, everything feels vitally important. It's hard to prioritize, okay, I need to be doing this or this. So as you've all graduated people, what is something that if you could go back in time and tell yourself in the beginning of the high school journey that would make your journey easier, that you learned and went, shoot, I wish I knew that in the beginning?
I have a list. Because that's how I roll.
I was laughing at her earlier consider lists. I'm like, what?
So I wish I had made this list that I made a couple of days ago after the conference, actually, years ago. And I'm not going to read the whole list because it got really long. But I decided to sit down. I don't know what speaker mentioned it. Anyway, what I would like them to be able to do by the time they left my home. And I came up with things like deal with conflict and have a love of learning new things, write a solid 3-paragraph essay, basic math skills, know how to cook, keep a calendar, meet deadlines, be kind, live on a budget.
Can we post these to our email?
Be content with whatever
Mhm.
budget you have. Know your Bible. Know how to pray. Drive a car, basic car repair, you know, proper diet and exercise, problem solving, knowing how to forgive and ask for forgiveness, basic home maintenance. And when I got to the end of the list, I'm like, funny. It wasn't high level calculus that didn't make it onto my list. It wasn't knowing how to dissect a novel into all the important whatevers. Like none of those things made my list. And I thought, oh wow, like having that list, you know, maybe a few years back. I mean, I still have another run. I've got 3 left, but you know, I just thought, isn't that interesting? We've got 24 hours in a day, which, you know, if you've been here before, we've talked about that before. You've got 24 hours. You got to sleep for like at least 7 of them as a minimum. And you got to eat and you got other things. So make a list. Make a list. Where do you really want them? And then focus on those things that they really are going to need. And
I 100% appreciate your list because I would
love it.
agree with it. And I would like to add to that and just say that it goes faster than you think, and then they move out and you're done.
Yeah.
When they're out of your house, there's no chance to teach them how to budget.
Yeah.
There's no chance to then teach them how to change the tires on the
Yeah.
car. That opportunity, I mean, not that it can't happen, it's just not going to happen, right? That opportunity is while they're in your home, and you can drag them out of their whatever and say, hey, let's do this now. So it's horrifying when they're gone and you realize how many holes you've left, and you're like,
Yeah, that's how I felt writing the list. I thought, oh boy, there are some things on here that are really important that, I mean, they're all still at home except for the married one. And she married somebody that has all the things that she's not good at. He's really good at. So
it's okay.
God worked it all out for me now. But yeah, just man, there are some things here. I gotta up my game a little bit on some of these other things that are really important that I know I have muddled through terribly as an adult. And it would just be really nice if they didn't have to do that.
Thank you.
I had my hubby home some of the days, and he would say, oh, good, you're going to homeschool the kids? I'm going to go out and change the tires. Oh, no, you're not. Take them out and teach them all to change the tires.
That's amazing.
And do the brakes and anything that had to be done. And actually, when I challenged him to do that, he's been a great homeschool teacher. But I did have to ask him to to teach.
It doesn't
And
seem
he-
to come to them naturally, does it?
Well, it was like,
To
oh, I
point it
can get
out.
it done so much faster if I do
Yeah.
it myself.
Same
Yeah,
with the
Oh, we know
dinner
that.
and the laundry and
I know.
everything.
Yeah.
So much.
tough. Let's get out there and do it.
Yeah.
And then he said to one of the boys, I want you to go out and change the brakes on Mom's van. And if you do it wrong, she'll die. and he was pretty freaked out about that. I think Dad did go out and say, yeah, it's all done right.
But way to communicate consequences.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that was good. Okay. Jamie is suggesting that we need to do something with your mom, Adrienne. So Val, we need to have
She
like
really could.
a grandmother's
Yes.
night, a grandparents
Yes,
night.
wouldn't that be great? Yeah.
Do I count for that too?
Well, yeah, because you are a grandparent. So
I am not.
you
so I
check
will sit
all the
there.
boxes, Norma. You get all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to think on that.
Yeah.
Another question is, do any of your kids play video games? And how do you set the boundary for high schoolers since it's part of their social life?
Never let them in your house.
Yeah.
Seriously,
They weren't a
just
big
never
deal
let
when I
them
was
in.
raising my kids, but the computer didn't go on till 4 in the afternoon at my place, and we only had one at the time.
Now everyone has one in their pocket.
Yeah.
No way. Well, no,
We
my
don't.
my
Graduation, then
kids
you get one.
didn't have phones either when phones came out until they were driving. When they had their N and they were off in my car, they had a phone. But then there wasn't a lot of stuff going on phones at the time. So
Yeah. A flip phone.
Yeah.
so I might have grandkids that are into games and stuff.
I think it's the one where you open the door and it just comes in like a lion, right?
Mhm.
I
So
just saw. Oh, sorry, I keep
no,
interrupting you.
you go ahead.
I just saw a quote just this morning or yesterday that said, "Give your child a phone when you want their childhood to end."
Oh,
And I thought,
wow.
That, and so
Wow.
to video game like screens, I would just go strong out of the gate, be on the same page as your husband, and be a force, and say no.
Yeah.
Unless your husband's the one saying yes.
Okay, that I get that too, but like, and I don't even know.
Well,
Like,
in
that's
that
a
case,
tough
I just
one.
decided I would have to submit to him.
And I agree.
And
I've
It's like
had
it's
to do
on
that
him.
too.
He has to answer to God, not me.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and we did that too. But I know my husband, if he was here, he would say, "Be strong, keep it out of your home as long as possible, and then if you do let it in, be strict. Be really strict."
I wonder if there's a way to tie that into helping them be motivated. Because I know, like,
Yeah.
so we've like no screens in our house.
Yeah.
My kids are not getting phones until they're 18 at least,
Yeah.
and driving, and it's just a hard no for us.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's a way where you could say, okay, as long as all your schoolwork is done, like I know you want to go play games with your friends,
Yeah.
but have you done all of this? And
Yeah.
if these things are done, no problem, you can take an hour.
Yeah.
But that helps them also to prioritize what they have to do.
Yeah. I could. Yeah. Definitely.
Have you seen I think it was just a meme. I will give you the password to the internet.
I love that.
Yes.
I've seen that
after
too.
you get such and such done.
Change
and I
the
think
password every day.
fabulous.
And yeah.
Well, you can even get filters that turn the internet on and off.
Mhm.
And say, during these hours of the day, you guys have internet, and during these hours, you don't. And that's
Yeah.
just how it is.
Mhm.
And I know it sounds like a hard line to take, but I think we have to take that line against technology and gaming and movies and phones. And
Mhm.
I would say our home was definitely like because we all compare and notice what other families do. We definitely were in the more strict camp, probably not like the strict of the strict. And I would say I wish we were even more strict and just more cautious and more selective. Yeah.
So to speak to that, that's where deception comes in with your children, because they will do everything they can to play on screens.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm addressing some of my son's friends because I'm like, you're deceiving your mom, right? This needs
Yeah.
to not happen, right?
Mm.
Your mom's telling me one thing and I see completely different behavior at my house, right? So you have to be careful when you decide to be super strict that your kids aren't running around doing other things. And I want to talk about another dark topic, and that is pornography. It is rampant in the homeschool community, just like it is everywhere else. Do not fool yourself.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. Like, I don't know about what kind of safeguards you can put on your computer, if they can, whatever, but everybody's got their phone. I remember my kids, you just walk past some dude and he's got something on his phone, right? So it's everywhere. They go through the mall and they see La Senza, all of their advertising and stuff, right? It just breeds that in them. So you have to be guarding their hearts all the time, because you let that slip and then their adulthood is plagued with it, because it is just creeping, right? So.
And I remember, this is way back when, but if you click on something, you happen to say toasty buns, something silly, and something pops up on the screen. Those kids can't get out. It's designed that way. It is a loop and it's a circle, and it's really awful. And the kids finally just left the room. It was out at the office, and it was a visiting kid. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but that's what happens. Click, click, and you can't get out of it. It is very pervasive.
I really appreciate that, because I think sometimes those sorts of things just kind of aren't on our radar. Like, we're like good Christian families, and it just kind of like, oh, but we're not going to fall into that trap. But the thing is that we still have to be on our guards, because it's so accessible. It's so prevalent. I have a rule with my kids that they may never look at anybody else's phone. I don't care who it is. I don't care what they're doing. But, and like, even with babysitters and things, and I always tell babysitters too, it's like, you may never show my children what's on your phone. They may never look.
Yeah.
And my children have learned to respect that, because it's like you say, it can be as innocent as, you walking by someone and you just like kind of, I don't know, by habit glance what they're looking at, and that's it. It's over. And it just takes one look.
And this is another part of the dark part. Your good friend, I'm going to pick on you because you're sitting right beside me. I trust her. She trusts me. That doesn't mean her kids and my kids are trustworthy. So you have to, every single step, you have to, what's it called when you vet them?
Yeah.
Every individual gets vetted, right? So, and I expect her to deal with my children because I trust her, but I can't say just because I trust her kids. Right. So just be on your guard there too, right? So teens are tough.
But that's part of that community parenting too.
Yes.
It's like we deliberately don't trust each other's kids because they're kids. They're teenagers, right? So that would be foolhardy. But if one of my kids was into something that they shouldn't be into, and my friend found out and told me about it, like, that is a good friend, right? That's the kind of friend we need. Those are the kind of parents that we need to intentionally seek out and be in community with, because we can't trust our children. And I don't mean that necessarily, like, I don't mean like absolutely can't trust them, because we can and we should. We have to show them that we trust them, but there's still that aspect of
the enemy is very
but there's that aspect of being of knowing, like, you want to trust them, right? But if they mess up, then, and they know too, if they mess up, that's going to make me lose mom's trust or dad's trust. And that should be the thing that makes them the most afraid, is losing your trust.
I would say don't trust your kids. I tell them, I don't trust you. You are a sinner, just like everybody else.
And they are lying to you. And then they'll tell you in their 20s, oh, Mom, remember that? And
Yeah,
like, oh,
100%. Yeah.
My toddlers tell me things I didn't know, and I wish I had.
Next question. This is a really question, but I don't know if you're familiar with Greta Eskridge. She's like on Instagram as Ma and Pa Modern, and she's written a book called Adventuring Together. It's like a homeschool with your family, be out in nature and stuff. It's anyway, she has a lot of helpful information and resources on protecting your kids from porn. On her Instagram, she has a bunch of like highlights of Greta fights porn, and just gives tons of information.
What was her name?
Greta Eskridge, but on Instagram it's Ma and Pa Modern.
Ma and Pa Modern.
Yeah, so like Ma and Pa, you know,
Yeah.
Kettle.
Jingles.
Laura Ingalls,
Kettle.
yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
then she really
Mine's a-
promotes this one that I started following as well called Protect Young Eyes on
Mhm.
Instagram. They give a lot of helpful information about
Yes.
like what technology is doing right now, how you can protect your children,
Yeah.
things to be aware of, all
Yeah.
that good stuff.
Yeah.
That's
really
good.
helpful.
That's very good. And I
Yep.
find that like that part of raise my, so just so you know, my oldest turned 13 last week. I am officially the parent of a teenager.
And so begins.
I'm so excited.
I want to clarify. When I was saying click, 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 he was doing X, get out,
Yeah.
get out, get out. And so I wasn't saying that he continued to look.
Yeah.
He was trying to get out. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, but
No,
I
he
think
was. They
it's
were
that
so
this layer of
embarrassed.
technology that I think we all are now having to face that past generations just didn't have to face.
And you gotta
Mhm.
keep up.
It's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
And that's
And
what
that's-
exhausts
yeah.
me. And so like that's partly why I'm saying too, like zero tech, no tech, we're just not doing tech
Mhm.
because mama can't handle it.
Yeah.
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 Right. And
Yes.
just to add to that too, I was a 24 to a 14-year-old, so we're all 3 are graduated, and I can say when you say about your babies, it's like your youngest one, because it was just easier to let them have a moment or do that while you were helping those older ones graduate, right? So we're kind of paying the price now because that's the lad that I have to haul off and I'm doing that with. So I 100% agree. It's like so much easier to just not go there.
Mhm.
But if you have,
Mhm.
it takes a while. It takes like 3 months to reset the brain.
Yeah,
Like 3
I
months
agree.
from de-gaming.
Yeah.
And you cannot, like, it's just designed to loop them in and to, like, it's
Mhm.
100% a lure.
They're also angry.
yeah, yeah,
and
there's all kinds
They're
going on.
mean when they're gaming all the time,
Exactly.
right?
And I was just gonna say that kind of passive absorption that they're doing, and they're all like this, you can't expect them to be excited to read all of these
That's
amazing books. You cannot.
Right.
Don't even try
Right.
until you've detoxed and you've read out loud to them again at whatever older age, because you can't lure them back into this world when that one's so easy. So I 100% agree. Just don't go there and be mean for a super long time.
Yeah. Well, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned like the books. So with my kids, like I've just made it clear, like we're just not doing that, right? And yet we read an awful lot. Like they can read, well, they're here and they read a lot of this stuff. And then when something does sneak in, or there's a game or so, and they're like, okay, we can do this, and they're doing it, I'm like, well, is that fun? Like, does this show the kind of virtues we want? Like, are they being kind, and are they? And oftentimes it's like, oh, that's awful, that's disgusting, Mom. We don't want to be part of that. So I think sometimes in the tech battles and in these gaming battles, the antidote is surprise, good books. Right?
Mhm.
We need them to have a rich imagination. We need them to furnish, as Andrew Pudua said, they need to furnish their minds with beauty.
Mhm.
And so if we are filling them up,
Mhm.
especially if you have the little ones, and I've got my little 6-year-old, and I feel like that's where he's my baby. I'm filling him. Like he's not getting nearly the kind of poetry memorization or like literature or books that my older kids got. And so again, it comes down to, what are you furnishing their minds with?
Mhm.
And that's hard. It's
And
hard.
I would say books and hobbies. And the hobbies that don't cost a lot of money, hobbies that you don't necessarily have to go anywhere,
Mhm.
are really important. Because I don't know about your older kids, but you know, once they do have a phone and they do have access to more things, like some of them are going to make not great choices, even if it's just the volume, the amount of time they're on there, even if they're not looking at anything they shouldn't be. But if they have hobbies and things they like to do, I don't know, painting or cross stitch, or like my oldest son, woodworking and things like that. I just think those, if you can feed those things, because even if they do have a blip where they have spent too much time on their devices or whatever, if they have something to go back to that they enjoy and can do, and I don't know, hiking, or I don't know, but just introducing hobbies, get them interested, something that's going to be their thing.
We
Actually-
motivated,
sorry, go ahead.
we motivated one age son to get his work experience, he needed 100 hours on something. And we bought a broken piece of machinery and a manual
Smart.
and said, there you go, go out and fix it.
I love that.
And he had time with Dad.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of time on his own to fix it. And that was great.
Mhm.
Yeah, he went on and took an auto mechanic apprenticeship. Yeah.
I actually think nature, though, now that you mentioned nature, I think nature is an incredible antidote as well. So,
Mhm.
like, once a week, get outside and do a hike. Like, if you're doing Teapot Hill at Cultus Lake every single week, do it. Like, get out there. The other thing about nature is, and especially some of these hikes, is that it's physically exhausting.
Yeah.
Which is important for them. So, now I don't know. Believe it or not, we are at 20 minutes after 8.
Oh, wow.
So I would like to go for about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
And then we're going to close. So what are your final questions, burning questions?
Burning question. I would love to know, what is a mistake that you feel taught you the most, or
A
a
mistake.
mistake that you made that you learned a lot from?
Can I tell a mistake that happened in our household that taught everybody? I've got it here as dating. So my older girls were about 13 and 11-ish. And the gal that lived with us, she worked at the food bank. And next door, the fellow that lived with my brother-in-law was a recovering addict. Hard to say. But we kept they were totally left alone, except that one night she decided she wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and he'd stay up with her and they'd sit in the kitchen, a common area, and play guitar. And we said, you guys are going to get romantically involved. It just happens. You spend so much time together. Beware, be careful. So when it came time that they were getting their wedding invitations printed, he fell off the wagon and it was permanent. It was over. Now, we lived through this, and this was such a good example for the kids. Terrible thing to have happen, because we loved him and now he's fallen, and we loved her and she was devastated, and she stayed with us. She lived with us, continued to live with us through Christian counseling. And counseling that came in was, make your top 10 things for your next potential spouse, the top 10 things that you will not compromise. And then the list of everything you would like, and pray about it. Always pray about it. The top 10 things has to be a Christian. One of my daughters said, can't smoke. One said, Dad would approve of this fellow. And the other one, Dad didn't have anything to do with it. It depended on their top 10, but they would not compromise. So you meet a fella, you find out that, I don't know, something that was not in your top 10, or yes, he doesn't fit that top 10 right off the bat. Don't invest in this other person. It was seemingly very easy for the dating, because you could pick them out better than that with this top 10 things on your list. And the girls made very good choices. And one of my daughters at the wedding said, I have to tell you, my top 10 things, my husband met right off the bat, and we continued to date, and he's met every one of these things I wanted. He can ride a horse. He wears cowboy boots. He likes Wranglers. Like, some of them were just sweet and innocent, lovely little things on their list, but that top 10, and we could say to them, wait a minute, doesn't this fellow something or other, isn't that on your top 10 that you did, or he doesn't meet that top 10? They go, oh, you're right. Yeah, I'm gonna have to gong them. Anyway, that was my advice on dating.
I think for me, I wish I had homeschooled a little differently, but I don't think I know I didn't have the capacity to do it back then. So it's not really helpful for me to dwell on that because I couldn't have done anything different. But I think I would have chosen to do more classical education, more book. I wouldn't say studies, but that dialogue that happens from really good books and stuff. We missed a lot of opportunities by me, and truthfully, a lot of it had to do with my lack of knowledge. When I started homeschooling, I didn't know anybody who homeschooled, and I had no support except for this community that I was in. And so I fudged my way through it, and my kids are the result of it. But I wish I could have done it differently. I would have dug into classical education more. I think it's brilliant.
I didn't pay her to say that.
No. She didn't.
I did a lot of reading out loud because that's how you contain a bunch of kids in one room. I had the older girls in the other room doing their studies, and I'm reading to the littles. And I had one under the table because he played Lego. That's the only way he can concentrate when I read out loud. And he got all the answers right, by the way. And the other kids would sit around the table and they'd listen. And an opportunity came to discipline one of the children. They'd done something, and we had to take a pause from the break to discipline. And a voice from the other side said, "Keep reading the book." My grade 10 was actually listening in on the story. So it's never too late to start reading to the kids.
I think it's never too late to start, and
Right.
I think never stop.
Never stop.
Never
Yeah.
stop.
Sorry, you've all heard my big aha moment.
I don't know
Most
if
of
I
you have anyway. And that was a story I told about my friend who had 6 children but decided to send her kids to school. And I was on the phone with her one morning, and as we often did, as she was driving back from dropping her kids off at school, we would chat. And she talked to me how, I pray for each kid in the morning, and I pray the whole way driving back. And I cover them with prayer all day long. And I had this moment of, oh, I do not do that. And I realized that I was putting an awful lot of faith in homeschooling. And I was in the protection and how my kids were going to turn out and all of that kind of stuff. And that was a real, I was very, as I got off the phone, feeling very humbled, because I think, that there's just no way around it. We all have to be praying for our children diligently and regularly. And I really upped my prayer for them and my family after that. I admit I was putting my faith in homeschooling and what was going to come of that for my children.
So I say Jesus saves, not homeschooling.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I knew that,
Yeah.
I knew that, but I was not living that. And I think because she was putting her children in this environment that she knew was going to be challenging for them to navigate, she just naturally just prayed. So when she was describing it to me, I just thought, I have never done that. But it was because I was resting in our decision to homeschool. And that's a big mistake. That's one among many things.
Okay, so we are coming to the end here. So thank you. That was actually an excellent question to end on. Before we close this, I'm going to give each of you the opportunity for 2 minutes. And I'm really strict about time, as you know, to give an encouraging word to moms of homeschooling teenagers through high school.
Yes, thank you. So my oldest, she was academic in the maths, and I was unable to help her. So she went to public school in Abbotsford for 2 classes, math and physics in grade 11, and then all of grade 12. She did math, physics, and aviation. very good at her academics in that regard. But what she noticed when she went to public school is what I want to encourage you about. She grew up in a home where learning was appreciated and it was encouraged, and she got into the public school system. And she said, Mom, they suck the joy out of learning. These kids, whatever, teenagers, they have no interest in learning anything anymore. So what I'd like to encourage you in is that no matter what the journey, no matter how difficult it is, whether you do this subject or don't do this subject, whatever, it doesn't matter. Give them the joy of learning, inspire them to be curious, to find out about the world around them, whatever tickles their fancy. They will be amazing adults, whether they did this academic thing or not, because you've invested in their lives. And like Adrian said, pray for them. Jesus saves them. Pray for their salvation. Always pray for their spouse's salvation. And when they're adults, all mine are in their 20s, they come home, they laugh at me. Mom, you were nuts. And we have a good chuckle, but they treasure their childhood. So I encourage you.
Okay, encouraging. I had a grade 5. I know I'm going backwards, but she came home from church and she said, Mom, you didn't teach me cursive writing. And I thought, oh. So I said, let's get a book. We'll get a book on cursive writing. And we spent 2 weeks. She learned how to do it. And she came back after the 2 weeks and she said, that was no big deal. You didn't teach it to me. I learned it. We learned it at home in 2 weeks. No big deal. No big deal. From then on, nothing's really a big deal if you know how to find the books, find the instruction. And my attitude was always, I don't know how to do that. Let's find out. And we do it together. I had my oldest, I said, I'm going to a homeschool conference and they want me to speak on something. Tell me what was a really important thing that you learned that I taught you at school? Tell me something. And she said, well, Mom, I don't remember you teaching me anything. And again, I was shocked. I said, what? She said, you made everything fun. Everything we did I was involved. It was something that we'd learn and we'd do. And I always chuckle and have a laugh over everything. So I made things fun. They might not have learned everything they should have learned, but they knew that they could spend 2 weeks and learn anything. So it was all good. And I love my kids to bits. They all come over. Like I say, we sometimes should keep the phone in a lockbox somewhere else so that the government can't hear what we're saying. And we have great conversations and they can all think very well on their own.
I guess my encouragement would be, I never was, still am not an academic person. I didn't read books really until I was an adult. I barely got through high school. I did do a 2-year diploma at a college. And my kids have turned out all right. And I didn't come from a Christian home. My mom is a faithful follower now, but that's not how we were raised. And you can do it. You can do it. You don't have to be this super high academic person. They will, all of my kids, even the ones that they don't really lean towards the academic side, have surpassed me and what they learned in math and everything. And you can do it. You can absolutely do it. And they're going to turn out just fine. And be in relationship with them and pray for them.
And make friendships amongst yourselves. Call on each other. Like it's so fun. It makes your journey more fun as well. Like I've made friends for life. And most of them are the homeschool moms because we share a faith, but we also share a foundational principle on how we wanted to raise our kids. Like there's just something about homeschool moms.
Thank you so much. So let's give our speakers a thank you. So good. Thank you. And I also want to thank Bo Davy for handling all of our tech.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. All right, let's finish up with the treats.
Yes.
Oh,
Go
all
eat the
right.
treats.
Oh boy. Am I gonna be